Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into ChannelBK. I'm getting over a sinus cold, so we're just gonna get into it. This is a classic album review for Max Richter. I watched an interview and I just am copying the right pronunciation of his name. This is the Blue Notebooks. Max Richter is, I'm just gonna call him Max. Max, the homie Max. I'm sorry Max if you're insulted by me calling you by your first name, but I love this album and I'd love for you to watch this video. So yeah, we're gonna keep it to Max for now. But Max is a composer and a multi-instrumentalist. This is his second album that came out in 2004 under, it's a side thing of Fat Cat Records, which is 130701. Yeah, that's a very catchy label name. Max is an artist that I think if you bring up to a normal person, they won't know who he is. They're like, who is Max, right? And when you start to really dive into all of the stuff that he's done, I think all of us have at least heard something of this, whether or not musically, like just his own solo stuff, but rather his film and TV work. Max did a lot of stuff. He did Brad Pitt's Ad Astra. I know one of the biggest things he's done is The Leftovers. And that's actually now how I got into him. I think like most people, I got into him from the main behemoth song on this album, On the Nature of Daylight. And it then became fascinating for me to look into him and to learn just who he was, what he was about. And it was fascinating to me to see a guy who is this classically trained musician dive into film and TV. Because I feel like a lot of times lately, and again, this is just speaking from what I know of my ignorance, but you really don't see a lot of that crossover. I think the most famous one of late, film nerds love him and music nerds love him. Johnny Greenwood of Radiohead is a very good example. Or someone like Colin Stetson, who does his own music but went into that world. So it's fascinating to me to see him being this musician traveling into these worlds of film and TV and getting his music out there and doing very different things. So to go into his own solo stuff, his own work, was a really exciting feat. Now, I've brought up composer, musician, I brought up, compositions and scores. Yes, this is an album and a musician who is basically a composer, and the music, doesn't really have a lot of vocals to it. It's just the music speaks for itself. I'll get into obviously the vocal stuff in a few minutes, but this album basically lives and breathes from what he's putting together and with his team. This album, in a way, and again, this is me being a normie trying to talk about this record, but it feels like a classical composer who was just super into Brian Eno. Like that is the two worlds that are colliding on here. It's just these great compositions, great piano work too, but with the idea that there's a lot of synth work on here, electronics, there's a lot of ambiance too to a lot of these songs, and the record itself is a very kind of slim record. It's about, doing this review right now, it's cracking me up because one of our cats just literally put their paws underneath the door. So that was a distraction, but we're keeping that in the video. Going into this record, I really was just fascinated by it because it's a record of his I've heard about, obviously with it having On the Nature of Daylight on it. But then I was just interested in what he said about the record, it being a political record. It came, when he made it, it was leading up to the Iraq War, so it's more of a sensory album that makes you think about what's going on, and it's a political record without it cramming things down your throat because it's not like aggressive musically, and then obviously there's not really vocals, but there are vocals on here, which is some spoken word stuff from Franz Kafka's The Blue Octavo Notebooks, I believe that's how you pronounce it, by Oscar winner, everyone's favorite weirdo actor. I guess I shouldn't say weirdo, but like I think people understand when I say Tilda Swinton. I mean, hey, I know you saw Snowpiercer. I love Tilda Swinton, she's great, and she doesn't gum on the entire record. There's a couple songs where she has these passages. I think her vocals are actually really interesting. Sometimes they're not the most like captivating, but I think Tilda being the actor that he chose was a fascinating one. And again, it kind of adds to it, and it gives you a little bit to think about, like easier stuff to think about, where it's not just music in your head, you get these passages. And that starts with the title track and the opening, The Blue Notebooks, which has Tilda doing an excerpt. And while this is happening, it's the sounds of what is like someone, I don't know, like I guess we can interpret it as someone going off to war. It sounds like a busy train station. It has that kind of old school feel where you watch those movies and they're dropping them off at the train station and they may not see them. And that's kind of what I got from that song. It's very, you know, it pulls you in, it gets you in the mood. It's very short. A lot of these songs on here are either really short or these big behemoths. And I think it is a nice way to settle into the album. Horizon Variations is one of 3 specific solo piano pieces on the album. This is probably the most bright one. It's very bright. Just the way the keys twinkle is just gorgeous. I love just the hint of atmospheric, spacey synths that are laid on the track as well. I love the way it builds near the end. The thing that I think is so great about this, and another one of these tracks that I love, is how within this short amount of time, just the progression and the chord progression, I guess, that he makes on it just sticks in your head. Just, it's an earworm. Shadow Journal is, I believe, the longest song on the album, and it definitely has the most going on. It does, I believe, open with Tilda giving another excerpt, reading, and then the song, it feels like it's out of some like old gothic horror movie, like the slowness, the whoo, whoo, of the synths, and then just that slow, it just gives me like tingles down my spine, just chills of the string work is incredible. The epic bass, I hate saying the word epic, the just deep bass, there we go. The deep bass that then comes in on the second half just adds to this pulsatingness of this slow, just eerie track, and it gives you a lot to work with in terms of the sonics of it, and I never think it ever feels like it's dragging. It is just, again, once it builds to that really deepness and it's just in your ears like that, it's great. Iconography, again, hate me if I pronounce that wrong. It's the following track. I really like this track. I love the spaciness once again on this track, but I love the way he uses the really gorgeous high-pitched vocals all over the track. I think, again, there are tracks on here where it's a little redundant to be like, they're heavenly, angelic, and you just are so sucked into it. But it works for this album's advantage just sonically, where you're just sort of sitting kind of just in a daze, just like what is going on, because of how angelic and heavenly it is. But the following song, Vladimir's Blues, is probably my second, if we look at it just legitimately, I think it's my favorite piece of music on here. It's just the chord progression, boop, 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 and then it changes halfway through, and it's like a minute and a half, and it sticks in my head every single time. It's so like, it gets in, it gets out, and it's mind-blowing how just simple and beautiful this song is. Arboretum, again, I didn't study this, English, whatever, but I was talking about how the last song was so gorgeous and beautiful. This song brings it to a bit of a clunkier place. The first, I don't know, like the first minute, I think, like minute and a half, is very kind of empty. There's not a lot going on, and then it switches into kind of this very weird, clunky noise. Honestly, I think this track is a little redundant. I feel like the sonics of the kind of weird switch up doesn't necessarily fit that much for me. And then the following song on here, Old Song, is the third solo piano track, and I don't know what it is about this. I clearly there's a purpose to the very you're hearing the song from like another room sort of thing. And obviously it's just a stripped piano. These two songs are probably the two parts of the album where I lose it just a little bit. It's definitely these moments where I think his experimentation doesn't necessarily grab a hold of me like that, but I think these are really the only two songs that really affect me in that sort of way, even though I like the boldness of them, and I think, you know, putting them on here is, you know, it's fine. Like, it does have a nice flow, and I don't think either of these songs go on for too long for you to really kind of be like, okay, get this over with. Organum. It's organ and then so I feel like that's the way to say it. This track is so weird. Like, from the title, the organs and the sound and the way they are mixed together is just so, like, it feels, again, like there's these moments on here musically where you're just kind of holding on, because again, when you know the kind of music Max makes and you know of his background, and then just him throwing in these sounds and the electronics, it just trips your whole, like, mind up, because again, there's so many weird detours on this album where he's really using a lot of interesting things. And again, the sonics and the atmosphere of this track is beautiful. Now, if you're not into a lot of that stuff, it's okay, because then the next song, which is sort of the really big finale, The Trees, is incredible. This is the second longest song on the album, and it goes back to the roots of those keys. This song definitely feels like it's building to something. There is a build-up. Then when the strings come in, it's absolutely gorgeous. Again, I think like some of the tracks on here, this does not feel like it is as long as it is. It's definitely incredible. And then the finale, Written on the Sky, is a reprise of On the Nature of Daylight, which I think is a gorgeous way. It's like a quick little outro, and I think it's a gorgeous way to end the album. But of course I gotta talk about that. I clearly avoided it because I wanted to talk about it last. I think a lot of things could be said about this song. You know, I feel like there are people that will talk about this song in a way where they think it's overrated or it's not as great, whatever. I've not changed my opinion on this song. I think every time this song is played, I still get moved by it. I really feel like this is one of the most, like, iconic pieces of classical music in the 21st century. This song's been used everywhere, and it's kind of, it's like that moment when you're an artist and you have like that one song that then really connects to people. I guess like a good way of comparing this, maybe like Jack White, like, or Meg White too, with the White Stripes 7 Nation Army. This is what this feels like. Like, this song is so ingrained in people who aren't even music heads because it's just been used so many times before. It's like a weird sign of what's to come, because then Max ended up doing so many great things in the world of other art and even art installations and other things he's been doing. And that piece, when it came out, like, it is so defining. It is so defining. And when I listen to it in the context of what he's saying about politics and the whole Iraq war that it was leading up to, it makes the song feel so different and so interesting, and it's eerie. It's incredible. I think just the composition of it is perfect. Again, this is just one of those things where I don't want to be over the top, because I think that there's so many things that have been said, but also it's just me wanting to make sure I get the point that I don't think it's overrated. I think this song is phenomenal, and I think the rest of the album is still incredible and very interesting and unique. This song just definitely, it sets the stage because it's early, and it really is the real opener to this album and the real lead-in. But I don't really think the rest of the album is like less than this. I think the rest of the album still gives you things that, you know, I think this is definitely one kind of thing, and then the rest of the album definitely takes you on a journey of all these sounds and what you should be feeling, and it's great. I think Max put together a really fantastic record, and this was a unique record I wanted to focus on, because going back to it and listening to it for the first time, it's definitely one of those records where I'm just like, yeah, I think this is great. I think it's a very interesting mix, and it's an innovative record for what would come, because from what I've seen, there's a lot of people that compare, like, that have other people that are like this nowadays, and I would love to hear some of them, because I think Max is great, and I want to know more. So if you like this album, comment below, like, comment, subscribe, tell me some of your favorite tracks, tell me what you like about Max. He seems like just a cheery old German man. Cheerio, who lived in, who's British, because that's where he lived. He was born in Germany. All that sort of stuff. But thank you all so much for watching. More videos are coming soon. More classic reviews all year long. Thank you for tuning in to ChannelBK. Peace out, everyone.